Hello and welcome. Happy Friday to today's Total Body Confidence Fit Friday. Today I'm excited to go with you all about squats. And I'm also excited because at the end of the month, Mandalorian Season 2, airing on Disney+. I'm a huge fan. Very excited. Almost as excited as I am to tell you all about squats. Squats is something that has been mystery to me. And we've got vertical orientation today. So I'm going to teach you all about squats. I'm going to show you a couple different kinds of squats. We're going to talk about everything you really need to know about what happens when we're all born with great squats and we lose great squats. And some people say that's because of something like sitting, but it's not quite that simple. So what we want to understand, and what I'm going to show you today in a couple ways with my good friend, Mr. Half, is how we get knee pain when we start to lose the squat pattern. This is something that I've done a lot of training. I've been training for over 14 years, a lot of exercise, tried a lot of different kinds of exercises, and had either seen clients with knee pain or experienced knee pain myself. And I was really able to solve the knee pain when I started to really understand what's actually supposed to happen as your hips get more range of motion. And squatting is just about actually folding. You got to fold your knees, you've got to fold your hips. And if you've got an issue with the relative motion of any of those, and relative motion means as the hip comes up, what's supposed to happen in the hip bone, what's supposed to happen in the spine. If you've got an issue with any of that, then what's going to happen is you're going to have to compensate. And that compensation is what drives us into problems. So let's start by first understanding the first range of a squat. When we have a standing position, like I'm standing right now, the first bend of the hip, this first beginning range, is going to require a movement from the pelvis. And that first movement is also then going to create a change in the orientation of your low back. So what should happen, so everything can work correctly, is that as we bring this up in the first range of squat, the spine should actually just kind of tip back a little bit. And the combination of that would give you a pretty vertical orientation. As you come a little bit deeper, what's going to happen is your body's going to tilt a little bit. And then as you come up more, your body should tilt backwards. The issue that can happen is if the body is actually stuck forward. And a lot of times you hear, well, sitting is really bad for you and it will decrease your squat range and all these things. Is all that true? Well, it's true if you sit in a position where you've tilted yourself forward, because you really need that position for the mid-range of the squat, but you need this position, this more vertical position, for the beginning and the deep part of the squat. When you lose these positions and your only orientation, your only option is to be forward, what it does is it actually puts, and this is a leg bone, you can see, if your body's supposed to be here with the leg bone, but you dump here, what's going to happen? All your weight is now in front of the leg, which is going to put a lot of stress further down the actual bone. And a lot of times, I'll see people that complain of knee pain, and I even experienced this myself where I had this really bad, it was like, wow, if that's the patella, if that's the kneecap, it wasn't the kneecap that was hurting, it was actually above the kneecap. It's almost like the bone above was taking too much pressure. And I'd especially notice it if I ran or walked a lot. And you can see from the orientation that if you lose the ability to tilt back in the spine here, because your pelvis is locked, you're going to be forward, and that's going to put excessive weight into the forward position of the bone. And let me show you what that looks like on an exercise. So if you've been coached by a trainer before, there's probably different squat variations you have, and I'm going to stand back a little so you can see. So one of the most common ways that you kind of see squats is someone puts a bar on their back, and they do one of these. Now, what that actually is creating is a situation where you've got somebody that is sticking their butt back, their torso's going forward, and they're folding like this. And a lot of times people will do back squats and they'll go, wow, I feel that in my back. Well, if you're forward, the rest of your spine is here like a bridge, so there is going to be a lot of pressure on the back. And this can be exaggerated or it can be subtle. And what I found and what's interesting is that a lot of pain that people will have is actually quite subtle. You don't need to have someone do a really big lean forward to have knee problems, back problems, and misalignment issues. I'll tell you what, actually, it can be as subtle as this. This is a test you can do just by yourself. If you bring your feet relatively close with your feet pointed straight, if you reach down and then you squat, if you can't come down here and you have to fall backwards, and you can't hug your knees and you feel like you're going backwards, then your pelvis is probably locked and you're going to have to fall back. So of the 3 phases that we talked about in the way the body moves, is you need to have the ability to push backwards, hold alignment. You need to have the ability then to come forward a little bit, and then at the bottom to go backwards again. If any of those positions aren't correct, what will actually happen is you'll have a compensation here, and sometimes people have pain back here in the SI joint. What that looks like in your body is like, oh man, this nagging pain right here. They'll have that there, and then they'll also have an accompanying pain through the rest of their body, maybe somewhere inside the knee, because when you can't get this into a good orientation, the hook here for your leg sits in relative position. So if you're stuck back here, your leg's got to be behind you. If you're stuck forward, your leg has to be in front of you. If you can't move back and forth between these positions, what you're going to experience is either back pain or knee pain, and these can really be huge contributors. So you need to restore all 3 of these positions. They have different demands, and one quick eval you can do, like I said, is making sure your heels are flat without any shoe elevation, making sure you've got a close position. Reach down, touch your toes, and then see, can you comfortably sink to the bottom of a squat and not fall backwards? And there's some nuances there, but that's the first step you can do. If either you feel like your ankles are tight, which would be a whole nother scenario. But one of the reasons why you could feel like your ankle's tight, we talked about, if you're in this position, your weight is in the front of your foot. It's going to put a lot of stress on the top of your leg bone, but it's also going to put a lot of stress into your ankles. And the result of having a lot of stress into the ankle is they're going to get tight, and you're going to lose the ability to push your knees forward. Once you lose that, not only are you going to lose the bottom of the squat, but you're also going to have ankles that probably always feel stiff. You might even get swollen calves. A lot of times we'll see clients, why would you have swollen calves? Well, if you've got compression in the ankle joint, well, the veins that pump all the fluids from your body, they can't pump and do their job like they're supposed to. So now you're going to run into maybe plantar fasciitis issues because of lack of circulation. I've seen a lot of people get acupuncture and have treatment for this, but the issue is that you have to readjust where your weight is. Otherwise, you're getting a lot of acupuncture and treatment, but you're still overloading the front of the ankle. That becomes the issue. So let's talk about a few different squat positions that can help you restore some of this. So the first step in really getting this restored is actually some of the earlier work that I shared about working on getting what's called the stack or a tilt. So when we just showed this position where someone's here and they're leaning forward, any position where you tilt your pelvis and butt backward is going to drive a relative forward motion. So what we want to do is get rid of that so we're more vertical. So you've got to get yourself a little bit of tuck, and just to show you, get yourself a little bit of tuck and then get yourself stacked so your body is in a straight line. What we commonly see and what really happens is people can be so overactive from doing crunches or sitting all the time that they get these really thick, almost overactive, what's called rectus abdominis muscles, which are the muscles that lay pretty much your six-pack muscles. And they look great, but they will actually crunch you. So what that looks like is someone goes to get their tuck and they do that, they actually slouch. And then they'll usually complain of like some back compression here. And that can be an overactive abdominal wall. So you want to avoid some of these pitfalls. Because one of the biggest things I see is I'll teach someone one of these movements and then they'll do it in the same compensation pattern that they have been doing it, and then they go, well, I don't really feel any better. It's like giving someone a nutrition program to try to help them get better, but they keep eating some of the same foods that are regular irritants. Even though you give them a lot of the supplements, they still have too many weeds in the system. The second thing you can do is if you feel like you may have that ankle compression issue that we talked about, or your calves are really swollen, one of the things that can really help is getting some kind of slant board or working out with a shoe, which I'm going to show you right here, that has a little bit of a heel tilt. And why you'd want to do this, I used to be a really big fan of training people to work out without shoes, because I really believed, your foot should be able to do what it's meant to do. Well, the issue is that your foot is not the way that you got it when you were a baby. So what you really run into is if you got stiff ankles and you're now distributing your weight incorrectly, that's actually going to change the shape of your foot. That's going to change the weight that you distribute your weight, and you're going to end up with toe issues. So think about if all of my weight is forward like this, the front of my ankle is going to try to catch me, then my big toe is going to try to catch me. And a lot of times we'll see people doing lunges where their back toe, and they go, wow, my back toe, my big toe just really hurts. Well, that's a sign that the ankle is compromised and they've overloaded that big toe joint. And once again, you could do a lot of therapy for it. You could tape the toe, you get a thicker shoe, but the issue is until you learn to place your weight back where it should be, you're going to have a whole skeleton that's falling forward, and you're going to be dealing with a lot of issues over and over again. I've seen people get treated 6 days a week and still never get better. And the issue is they've got to reshift their weight. And if we do treatment for an hour, 6 days a week, and someone goes and walks with the same pattern, works out, runs with the same pattern, they'll never get enough treatment to fix their tension. So you could use a shoe that has a little bit of an ankle lift. And why you need that is you need to reteach your body how to actually tilt the weight correctly. So if I get, and I'm going to show you, if I'm on here, now it's like I've got a shoe and it's bringing me down at an angle. Why would I need this? Well, I don't have a limitation in my ankle anymore, but back when I did, one of the reasons that would happen is if I came down, people squat like this. And you see how my butt's just shooting backward and my torso has to shoot forward. That's happening because the person has shifted so much weight into this long spine position that we talked about. They can't get enough weight and their ankle is impinged. So how do we fix that? Well, we've got to get them in a position where their ankle isn't impinged. So if you've got impingement, by the way, is where the front of the joint is actually stuck. There's no space. Okay. If someone can only lift their ankle to here and we want to squat and we want to restore these different ranges of squats, what you got to think about is that if I only got 20 degrees of ankle mobility, how am I going to squat 90, 60 degrees? I'm not going to be able to because I'm going to have to throw my back out. So to address this, what you can do is you can actually start somebody in a negative position where instead of starting them here and they're done squatting here, you start them here and they get an extra 40 degrees. And you can do that until the person gets their ankle mobility back. So once I'm on the stand, the thing that I'm going to do here is make sure my feet are straight. I'm going to get myself, instead of leaning forward, I'm going to get myself a little bit of tuck, and I'm going to act like I'm doing a push-up. And you can see right now, my body is in a pretty good straight line. What we want to avoid is the position where somebody starts like this. You can see my torso is actually behind me right now. From this position, what I can do as I get my little bit of tuck, I'm going to need to, and we just lost there for a second because someone called me. So this is going to be different for everybody. So what we've got is I need to reposition myself straight. I need to inhale. I need to keep myself tucked. And let's just say we're working on the first range. I would hold this here. And I would work, depending on my goals, different ranges of expansion. And we could do a lot of different squat variations holding that posture. But the ramp really, really helps someone be vertical. Let's say we got a weight. We want to train these loads. Well, we could either go in a position like this. We could go in a position like this, where it's held. Or we could go in a position like this. Each of these is going to be a different position for someone who's got stuckness in one range of that squat. So for example, in order for you to have relative motion, to bring your leg up at the first range of the squat, and for you to bring your pelvis backwards, if you're compressed in the back, you're not going to be able to get yourself backwards. Just makes sense, right? If you're already compressed, you can't compress more. So the first step that person would have to do is to get compression outside of their low back. And so that's going to dictate where we would hold the weight to create expansion and drive air in the direction that we need to. And retraining the squat is a combination of things. Getting someone squat and their knee better is a combination of things. And that's what I really wanted to share today in this live, is you have to start someone in the right position where their foot is supported, where they are now shifted out of maybe some ankle problems that they may have acquired from being in the wrong position. The second thing that you need to do after that is you need to teach yourself, and you need to be able to learn to feel what it's like for you to be straight. And how would you know that? Well, you would actually first need to understand where you're not straight. And that's more than a visual assessment. You actually want to look at the pattern that you might be using in order to move right now that's giving you either the pain or the limited range of motion that you have. Once you know what the pattern is, you can put the weight in the right place. You can then train the right range or part of that 3 sections of the squat. And you can start to restore that until you can retest and see that that's back, and then work your way through. And this is how I've gotten rid of a lot of hip and knee pain with a lot of my clients. It's also how I learned to get rid of my knee pain. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest eye-openers that I had, because I'm a therapist, I work on people, is I remember being on a training. I'm just getting really popular today, so I'm just getting a lot of calls. I remember being on a training program. And one of the things that I did on the training program is that I was having some knee pain, and I went and got treated for it. Felt really great until I went and did the workout again. And that's when I went, wow, there's got to be something wrong with my actual weight bearing, where I'm actually holding myself, how I'm doing the exercise. So if you're having pain doing any exercise, what I would look before trying to fix the exercise is what's going on with your body that you've lost the ability to do the exercise. Because otherwise, we're just chasing symptoms. So in summary, in order to bring our hips up, it requires relative motion through the rest of the body. That just means that as the hip goes up, there's got to be a movement through the pelvis, there's got to be movement through the spine. If we either lock at the pelvis, the spine, or the hip, we are going to lose those options. In order for us to get a full squat without falling backwards or having to compensate, we're going to need to be able to shift backwards, forward, and backwards. And we're going to have relative motion through these, which we're not going to go into, and relative motion through here. Once we start to lose that, like we're stuck forward, from either sitting, getting a tight back, any of these issues, we're going to actually start putting weight improperly through the front of our ankles and other parts of our body. What that's going to do is cause knee pain, ankle pain, compression issues that we're going to lose proper blood flow, we're going to lose proper functioning of the body. And that's usually how we end up with foot pain, ankle pain, calf pain, all these other strains and pulls and tears that, as human beings, you probably have heard about or even experienced. In order to address the issue, the treatment itself will not address the issue because we need to actually change the alignment of our body and restore these lost ranges of motion. And that's going to depend on where you're compressed, what's your normal compensation pattern, and then what you've been doing that's created additional compensation patterns. If you decided to do nothing as a way of trying to address the issue, would that solve the problem? Most likely not, because you haven't done anything to restore the tension difference between what has been strengthened and what has not been strengthened. So there's always a strengthening aspect to it, because remember, a lot of strength, and this is why you get someone who's new to exercising, it's like they make really good gains at the beginning. A lot of strength is neurological. So the nervous system itself has to learn the new pattern to reposition you so you can actually get the gain and get the position hold. Finally, the tilt is really important. The position of your foot's really important. All of these things are really important because your body was designed to be a certain way. But once you start compensating out of that position, like this, the feet, the ankles, the knees, everything else starts compensating too. And what we have to do is go, what do we actually want the body to do? Let's reposition you into that position so you can actually get back to that benefit. And if you do those things, your squat will look nice, your knees will feel great, you'll be able to get back into a good range. And the most important thing is you'll be able to work out and feel better after you work out. As you get older, you'll move just like you did factory specs. Instead of working out and going, man, I'm 50 and it feels like I've pushed my body so much that now I don't even know what to do. I don't want to give up doing what I love. And that's why I help and do these teachings, because that's what I want for you. I want you to feel great as you get older. I want you to feel even better the more you do the movements. And I don't want you to be wondering why you're having these problems. All right, I'll see you next Friday.